In this video, you will learn how to create an exterior elevation view. You'll see how to edit the properties of the view and adjust the crop region. And you will also learn how to edit material properties and override the visibility graphic settings of objects in the elevation. An exterior elevation is a 2D view showing the external facade of the building from a specific direction. They're used to show the arrangement of the facade and will often include levels and dimensions, as well as details of materials used in the facade. I have the exercise file, Exterior Elevation, open. We're currently looking at the exterior 3D view, and we need to create a new 2D elevation of this side of the building. First, I'll open the first floor plan from the project browser here. And we can see that we have 3 elevation markers for the north, south and east side of the building. And looking in the project browser, we can see those under the elevations group here. I'll pick the east elevation marker here, and we can see that it can have 4 views associated to it, although this one only has one view, which is the east elevation. If I select the pointer for this east elevation view, we can see the location of the cut plane and also details of the view in the properties palette. So looking at the view, we can see that we need to create the west elevation of the building. So to do this, we'll go to the View ribbon tab, and from the Create panel, we'll click the Elevation tool. Now, we can see the elevation marker is attached to the mouse, and as we move around the building here, we can see the pointer point towards the building. So we just need to make sure that we're on the left side of the building here and the pointer's pointing inwards. And then we can click to place the elevation marker, and then that elevation view will be created. And looking at the project browser, we can see Elevation 1A, which is the view that we've just created. So I'll click Modify to finish placing elevations, and we'll rename this view. In the project browser, we'll right click over and choose Rename, and now we'll call this West. So now we have the west elevation created. I'll open it up from the project browser. And first, we can see that not all of the building is visible, so we'll need to adjust the crop region. So I'll select it, and then using the drag controls, we'll stretch the top edge up so that it encompasses the whole of the building. So it's just above the roof here. And now at the bottom, we've got a little bit too much of the site in the view here, so let's use the drag control to bring that up closer to the ground floor level. And we'll also just bring it in a little bit on the left hand side here. And now we've finished adjusting the crop region, we want to hide it in the view. So to do this, we'll go to the View control bar, and we have a toggle for the visibility of the crop region. So we'll click on Hide Crop Region, and then that will be switched off in the view. Looking at the elevation itself, I can see that there's some objects missing that should be displayed on the left side of the building here. And this is due to the depth of the view, and that's controlled by the far clip offset that we can see in the properties palette here. To show how this works better, we'll first go to the View ribbon tab, and from the Windows panel, we'll click Tile Views so we can see all of the views on screen at once. Now, from the navigation bar here, I'll click Zoom All to Fit so that all of the views zoom to fit the screen. Now, looking at the plan here, if I click on the pointer for the west elevation that we've just created, we can see the blue dashed line here, which represents the depth of the view or the far clip plane. We can see it needs to go a little bit further into the building so that it covers the balcony and the roofs around the front of the building here. So we'll use the drag controls to drag this through, and then when we let go in the elevation view, we can see those objects now appear. So now that we have the depth of the elevation adjusted, I'll close the first floor plan and then the exterior 3D view. Then I'll click Zoom All to Fit once more so that fills the screen. Now, as this is going to be a technical drawing, we want to hide the planting and also the people that we can see on the balcony here. So we'll go to the Properties palette, and we'll click the Edit button next to Visibility and Graphics Overrides so that we can make changes. So here we can see we're currently looking at the Model Categories tab, and the first column here lists out all of the categories that we have, and there's a checkbox which, if it's selected, means that that category is visible, and if we unselect it, then that category will be hidden. And then we have further columns here that will allow us to override for both the projection and cut views of the objects. So first we need to find the planting category. So from the search box up here, I'll type in planting, and then we can see we have that category filtered. So I'll uncheck the visibility option here, and then I'll click apply, and we can see in the view behind us here that the planting has now been hidden. Now I'll go back to the search bar and we'll search for site, and then we'll uncheck the visibility of the site category again and click apply. We can see that they've now been hidden in the view. So I'll click OK to close down the visibility graphic overrides. Now we also want to hide the level markers in the view, and as an alternative way of doing this, I'll pick on one of them in the view, and then from the right click menu we'll choose hide in view and then category, and all of those level markers will be switched off, and this is the equivalent to unchecking the visible option in the visibility graphics overrides. Now looking at the topo surface in the view, we can see that we have the earth fill pattern applied to this. However, for this particular view, I'd rather it showed a solid fill. So to do this, we'll go back to the properties palette and click edit next to the visibility and graphic overrides. And now using the search bar at the top, we'll search for topo. And we can see we have the topography category here. So I'll select this, and now we can see the override buttons that we have for the different lines and patterns. And we'll click the last one here to override the cut pattern. And now for the foreground cut pattern, we'll click where it says no override and then choose solid fill from the list. And now beneath this, we'll click to change the colour, and we'll choose the dark grey colour just here from the colour swatch. And then click OK to assign that onto the override. Now we'll click OK to close the overrides here, and then OK once more to close the visibility graphic overrides. And we can see now that that topography has a solid grey fill in it, which is only applied in this view. Now to help give some depth to the elevation, we'll enable the shadows to be displayed. Looking down at the view control bar at the bottom of the view, we have a toggle here to display the shadows, which we'll click to switch them on. And we can see now that those shadows help read the depth of the view, with the area here projecting forward and also the overhang to the roof. However, the shadows are a bit too dark, so to adjust this, in the properties palette, we'll click the edit button next to graphic display options. And then here we can expand out the lighting panel, and we can see that we have a control for shadows here, so we'll drag the slider across to around 20, and then we'll click apply to see those lighter shadows in the view. And that suits our purpose better, so we'll click OK to close down the graphic display options. And looking at the brick wall here, we can see that it has a surface pattern that displays quite a detailed brick pattern. And for this model, we want to change it so that it displays just the horizontal lines of the brick courses. And also looking at the wall in the middle here, this has a stucco material applied, and we'd like to indicate this with a surface pattern. To change the patterns, I'll edit the materials applied to these walls, and this will affect the wall type and will therefore change all instances of these walls, which will be reflected in all of the views of the project. So I'll select the brick wall here, and now from the top of the properties palette, we'll click edit type to open the type properties. Now we need to access the structure of the wall, so we'll click the edit button next to the structure parameter to open the assembly. And now we can see that the top layer here is the exterior brick material, so we'll click on this, and then clicking the button that appears, we can open the material browser. And now looking at the graphics tab here, we can see for the foreground surface pattern that it has that brick pattern, and we'll click on this to open up the fill patterns. And then just above, we'll click on the 3-inch parallel pattern here, and then click OK to assign that onto the foreground surface pattern. And now we'll click OK to save the changes to this material, and then OK to save the changes to the assembly. And then finally we'll click OK once more to close down the type properties. And now we can see that wall is updated, and it's just showing the horizontal lines that are 3 inches apart to represent the courses of the brickwork. Now for the stucco wall, I know that this uses the exterior stucco material, So rather than go through the wall properties to edit this, we'll go to the Manage Ribbon tab. And from the Settings panel here, we'll click the Materials button to open up the Materials browser. And just here we can see the exterior stucco material, so we'll click on this. Looking at the Graphics tab here, we can see the surface foreground pattern is set to none. So we'll click on this. Now in the fill patterns here, if we start to search for stucco, we can see that appear in the list. So we'll select it and click OK to assign that into the surface foreground pattern. And now we can click OK to close the material browser, and that will update the material which is applied to the wall, and we can now see that pattern applied to our exterior stucco wall. So now that we have those materials updated, that completes creating this exterior elevation.